All right, Admin Mastermind and Teach Better Family. I don't even know how to start this because I am with a gentleman that I've spent way too much time with today. Because if you've seen the emails, you've seen it on social media, the Admin Mastermind not only has a morning session but an evening session. So I have 2 times the Gargus in my life. So,
You know what the best part is, Josh? Tomorrow morning, you're going to spend more time with me, and I gave you the opportunity to say we didn't need to.
I'm just a glutton for pain.
And technically, we were supposed to record this tomorrow. You could have taken a break, and you're like, "No, let's just." So I don't know what you're talking about. But this is a weird way to start our very first Admin Mastermind recap of like the new school year. But it is super exciting, and we are doing 2 times, 9 a.m. and 7 p.m. Eastern, which is really cool.
Yes,
Josh, when we first started the mastermind, we got such a big group. Well, one, I think it was in the evening.
Yeah, in the evening.
And it got so big that and we had some people asking to do the morning that we actually had 2 for a while. This was during COVID, so it was a little bigger then. But and then we did some surveying, I think it was a year or 2 ago, and it made more sense to just keep it in the morning. And then we decided right now, at least for August and September, because we know it's so crazy for all of you, that we wanted to offer it twice. This was, an idea was basically Josh and Chad that kind of came to that idea of like, hey, let's try this again. So we're gonna see. So it was really good. So it's kind of cool today doing. Last week we actually was our first week back. This week again, and great conversations in both meetings. So
oh my gosh,
very cool, very excited. Which, by the way, I'm just gonna say I'm stealing your thunder here. Like, if you're not already attending our Admin Mastermind, it is free. Weeklies on Tuesdays, free. We get together on Zoom. It's a great place to come and ask questions and vent if you need to, and find that support amongst educational leaders, private like administrative roles. There's also a private Facebook group for continued conversation stuff. If you can't make the meetings, it's all good. You don't have to make the meetings. You can come in and out as you need to. You can pop in and out. You can show up once and not show up for 6 months, and we'll still love you when you come back. It's all good. So you can go over to Josh is popping up the address on there, but teachbetter.com/mastermind. We'll get you in there. It's a free sign up there as well, and then that'll get you into the Facebook group. So, So 2 meetings today, which was awesome. So I assume let's start with the morning meeting then, huh? This is the first time we're doing a recap with 2 meetings, but
I know.
It's good stuff.
So hopefully, the morning session, well, first off, it was great to see everyone. And
it was, yes.
I mean, so many wonderful faces. And we took the break over the summer because we knew people were traveling and taking time. And we said, hey, like, just focus on your families, focus on your mental health, focus on just taking a break and not thinking about school if possible. But it was great to see everyone this morning. And then Jeff, you kicked things off. You were leading the charge, and I think you really looked at the goals for the school year. So do you want to start with that?
Yeah, we kind of talked about, we focused a little bit on goals and new initiatives and then a little bit on support and stuff. And, one of the first things that came up this morning, Josh, was one of our members dealing with some pretty massive shift and changes in their funding, like from their state. Losing over $1 million of funding for like PD. They're a pretty big district and stuff. And one of the cool things that came out of that's rough, obviously, like that changes a lot of stuff, and they have to move a lot of things in-house. But one of the things that I loved about this was this person was telling us that they lost that, and it was hard, almost like a traumatic thing for them to go through, because unfortunately that meant that some positions had to be let go, some things had to transfer, and it was just not great. But that they are looking at the positive, and the fact that they're actually been really inspired by how their team, from leadership all the way, through classroom teachers, everyone has come together to get through it and to support each other. And that's given her hope of being like, we're going to be okay. It's going to look different. Support's going to look different, but we're going to make it work, and our teams come together. So like, that was a really cool sort of kickoff of like the lesson of taking a crappy situation, finding the positives. And I think, in my opinion, and for me, it's just like, it just reiterates the fact that just educators are awesome. Like, you just throw whatever you want at them. Go ahead, state. Like, do it. Go ahead, COVID. What do you got, right? And teachers are going to make it work. Educators are going to come together. They're going to support each other, and we're going to make it happen. So that was really cool. A great way to start off there. I'm trying to think. We went in then. That was a shift. Then we shifted into talking a little bit about, and it kind of tied into there, but just in general with the communication going into the new year. And this was a little bit around like focusing on goals and on new initiatives. And the key of like the fact that fear of the unknown is very strong, and that's where fear comes from. And someone said, how did they phrase it? Like that silence equals unknown, therefore equals fear.
Right.
And what they were alluding to is like, as leaders, we have to be communicating clearly and consistently. Even if not everyone's responding back and you don't necessarily know what's going, consistently reminding them of why things are happening, why we are needing to put things in place, why there's trainings, why there's requirements, all those things, and the goals that we are trying to achieve together, and having their voice in there is super important. So I thought that was a really great one as well, right? So staying consistent, keeping the updates going. We said this a lot. I'm going to harp back to the like COVID, right? If so many of our conversations with leaders during COVID was, I can't even keep my teachers updated because things are literally changing day by day, hour by hour. And I harped, I don't know if I just remember myself. I feel like I was on like a record repeating constantly. What I kept saying was, there's so much unknown and consistency with everything they're getting, all the information they're getting from everywhere. You need to be the constant in their life, right? And I still think that holds true today, right? Where obviously it's not quite the same as COVID. Obviously it's different, but like, there's so much that educators are dealing with on a day-to-day basis in their classrooms, from parents, from communities, from the world too, and all that. You need to be that consistent and that constant voice of reminding them why we're here, reminding them what's going on. Because if you're that, then when you have to share the news that's like, hey, I need you to do this, or hey, we got to get this done, like, it's going to be perceived differently. It's going to be received differently. And so I thought that was a good conversation around that. And then, Josh, we got into, and I want to maybe chat with you a little more on this specific one. We got in pretty deep into new teacher orientation. And this was specific to someone having new teachers coming new to their building and district, both veteran teachers coming in new and new teachers coming in new, within those first couple of years. And they were talking, and they kind of posed the question to the group about, like, do you require for everyone or just your new teachers? Because their district had changed it where like only the first couple of your teachers didn't come. And there's a couple of things that came out of this. One was someone making sure that we were all like using the right words of like covering like how your district works and your building policies on that. That's more of onboard, and that's not necessarily like, that's a different type of orientation than training that might be needed, right? And one of the things that we kind of got to was this idea of, regardless of whether someone's been teaching for 3 years or 25 years, that doesn't necessarily mean that they are mastered anything or not mastered anything. And it doesn't necessarily mean that they are where you need them to be a part of your team. And so it's really important to get an assessment, just like we would assess students at the start of the year to get a foundation of where they're at. We need to assess our educators the same way, so that we know what we need to do in order to support them. And it's going to be different. And so curious to hear your thoughts on that as a leader on a pretty big district. I'm sure you had a wide variety of teachers coming in and out. How did you approach that aspect of ensuring that new teachers coming onto your team, regardless of where they came from, that you understood where they were at, what they needed, and that they understood that they were going to get what they needed from you?
Yeah. Well, I thought the conversation was beautiful this morning, and there was so many good folks, just inputting, what they've done, but then also just like, hey, this is how I'd like to see it change. And for me, it was always, I didn't agree with how the district ran it, because it was essentially, it was for your first year teachers, and then it was essentially catch and release, and hopefully they survive in the wild, And so for myself, that was really painful, really, because I knew that, especially a brand new teacher, they don't know what they don't know. They don't have the experience. They're constantly asking questions, or they don't have the questions to even ask because they don't even know the whole scope of their roles and responsibilities on the campus, in addition to the traditions, the procedures, and the strategies that are best practices. And so, for us, it was, yes, we'll do this for a year, but we also, similar to what you're talking about, there's an onboarding process that everyone knew, and that's new to the district, new to the campus, new to the profession, need to participate in. But it shouldn't stop there. And I think someone had stated something about the mentorship, right, as a title of, okay, so, year 2, year 3, year 4. And I don't know about you, and I know you've heard this before, is like most teachers don't feel comfortable in their role until year 3 or year 4. For an administrator, they don't feel comfortable until the same time span. And so for us to not give the support needed for them to be successful after year one is insane to me, and is something that still to this day I speak passionately about it, because it's just it's so foreign to me that we would just expect them to know everything with maybe 4 30 to 40-minute sessions that we check in with them over the span of a 1 year time frame. And so, for me, I just think that if you can build something that's beyond for our year 2, year 3, year 4, and maybe even longer, who knows, depending on what your campus looks like, I'm all for it, because I think that support is something that would be helpful and, needed for the campus.
Yeah, and I agree 100%. And I think, one of our members today talked about something that their district does that I thought was cool, in the sense of, like, once you get past that that initial onboarding, that has to happen. And for your brand new teachers, you may have some different requirements that they need to go through. But for everyone else, again, whether I'm in year 2, 3, 4, or 24, 25, whatever, figuring out what support is needed. And then they actually talk about, they host like events, not like required training and stuff like that. They didn't call it, there were events that were a combination of building relationships and sort of mingling or whatever, and getting support they needed in small groups and things of that nature. And I think was a really cool approach of, like, hey, like, we are trying to support you. We're offering the support, but you're a professional and you know what you need, and you can come to this if you want. You don't need to, but it's offered to everyone. It's shared with everyone, and it's created for everyone, not just specific to one another. There's no assumption that well, you've been teaching for 10 years, so you probably don't need anything. It's no, like, let's figure out what you need so that we can create those opportunities for you. And I think that was a unique way of looking at it. And we talked about
self-paced for teachers,
right? Yeah, self-paced for teachers. And we talked, like, harp back, like, to the assessment, and understand, because, like, and I think Chad talked about, when we work with districts, we typically have, like, early adopter, like, pilot group type things that start things, and then it goes from there. But oftentimes when we do, strategic planning and stuff like that, we're assessing and working with them to figure out where are all the teachers at, and they're very rarely in the same spot. So there's lots of times different entry points into whatever the array of things are, or the journey that you're hoping to get your teachers to this pinnacle point of where you feel like they are hitting the mark on everything. Well, some teachers are going to be close to that. Some are going to be way behind. Some are going to be, and it doesn't matter, but you got to figure out where their entry points are, and then provide them with the opportunities to get in there and keep progressing. So great conversation around that, I think. So
oh my gosh, super rich conversation.
Yeah. Like the conversation this morning was, well, actually both meetings was just
both
like
sessions. Yeah.
Just good, right? A little bit smaller group in the evening, but like a great conversation still.
Yep.
And I have lots of notes here. I apologize. I'm like flipping papers here, like a news reporter or something. That's just where I'm at right now.
This just in.
I gotta do this the way, like, Anyway, for those of you that can't watch it, I was like holding my papers like I'm a news reporter. Anyway, because I want to get to the conversation on that we had in the evening one, and I don't want us to go forever here, but I wanted to mention something that was mentioned in the morning session, something called Hope Squad, which I thought was really cool. Yep. Which is, I think the Hope Squad, I'm looking at their website, which is hopesquad.com. Like they very specifically on their site talk about, like, they work to spread hope and prevent suicide. But like what this kind of broke down to, there's someone that was sharing this, and I'm actually going to reach out to this member about possibly doing maybe a blog post or two, and maybe even an event that's like share with this, because this is such an important piece. But basically what this group, this program does in your building or your district is, you create, and they were working with 7th and 8th graders and their high school folks or students. They're building student leaders in groups, this squad of students that are voted on and selected by their peers as people who they would trust and be able and willing to go to if they were having a crisis in a situation. And there's some implementation of like a tip line where people can share concerns about a student if they feel like they're, one of the things that they mentioned was like, students follow each other on social media, so they might see trends that they don't. And this program trains the teachers, but then the teachers get trained on how to educate and train the students on how to notice things and see patterns and all stuff. It's just a really cool tool that I thought was really cool to be shared as well. And then that also then leading, we had a conversation that was kind of cool around just like student leadership and building off that. So it kind of all fell into how that's such a leadership builder too, right? So I wanted to mention that because I thought that was really special. I think that's something that will be shared out. I'm going to reach out to to the group over at Hope Squad, because that's something that I think would be fun to share with our larger network as well. All right, let's get into the evening one, because again, I don't want to go forever here. People do not need to listen to you and me for that long.
Well, I'll be quick. So the afternoon, just to bridge what the morning session talked about, because I think we ended with really that relationship building.
We did.
I thought that was huge with like, because we know the assessments as far as like, do you have a trusted adult on the campus? But especially our secondary, how important is it to say, hey, do you have a trusted peer that can assist you also? Because that is just as important. And sometimes, especially in the secondary, they listen to their peers far more than they listen to the adults in their life. So, that influence is absolutely
They will tell huge. A whole lot more to a peer that they trust. Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah.
So in the evening session, depending on your time zone.
So why are you calling afternoon, dude? It was 7 o'clock here. Okay.
Because it was I felt like it was afternoon.
It's afternoon for you though. I love it. Sorry. In the afternoon session, go ahead, Josh.
Right. So the evening session was more like, I feel like a lot of roles and responsibilities have changed with the group. People are getting promotions, they're in new spaces, new districts, new campus, whatnot. So a lot of it, as far as like the goals and the things that they're trying to work through, is the relationship building. So, we got a chance, me and you, to really hone in on, what are some strategies that we have tried in the various environments that we've worked in to build relationships that build trust, but then also help with just that value piece of like, you do need to do these things, right? Because we are in a supervisor role, but there's just, when a relationship is built and someone knows your true intentions, just how that just changes the conversations in the future, right? And how sometimes just the simplest thing of talking about a podcast that someone likes, or a show, or a sports team, or a concert that they just went to may seem small. However, there's a ton of weight that accrues over each conversation.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, and we kind of talked through, I'm going to come back to that, but because we talked about this kind of ties to the communication, the consistency, and being clear about how things connect and why you're asking things of them, or what your intentions are, and be their support. And then going into the relationship piece, Josh, you mentioned something that you did at your campus, which was relationship walks.
Yep.
Which you were kind of touching on, but I'm going to make you touch a little bit more on that if you wouldn't mind.
Of course. Yeah. So I was very intentional about, since I was new on the campus, I was new in a district, I didn't want my persona, which I did get feedback from folks to say like, hey, people think you're too joyful, you're fake in that, like, that's not really your personality. And for me, it was like, well, obviously they don't know me. And so what am I going to do about that? Right. Because that's not what I want them to think. I don't want them to think that was my, he's got too much energy, whatnot. So I went to classrooms specifically, or in the hallways, to connect with people on a personal level. So I had a spreadsheet. I know that's a dirty word for some folks, but I had a spreadsheet with names and dates of like when, because I needed the data personally for accountability, but then I also wanted to review that data as far as, who am I hitting more often? Is it because I have more that I'm connected with, or is it proximity? They're closer to my office. And so like really having a reflection time of like, why am I hitting certain people more than others? And I really had a goal of like trying to hit everybody. To maybe it's a 1 minute conversation or a 5 minute conversation, but not about school, not about anything, just about getting to know each other on a personal level. And that paid off with a ton of dividends. So, I just shared that strategy, for our folks that were new in their roles.
Yeah. And we talked about, obviously the importance of that relationship, and that being the foundation of all of that. This conversation was with someone who was in a new role, a coaching role, at a new to the building. So obviously working with that, sort of not quite a quote unquote admin in everyone's eyes, but also not necessarily a teacher in everyone's eyes, and also being new, having some requirements that they need people to do, but also a lot of stuff that they wanted to just support them on and stuff too. And I think we talked about like building a relationship and focusing on the first time, if not several times, in people's rooms, making it all about them and how can I help you? How can I help you? Not trying to pitch them on this new thing you want them to try, not trying to push things down their throat and anything like that, but really focus on supporting them and finding out what they need so that they can do the job better. And I think that was super important, but that relationship becomes the foundation of that. And, your talking about your relationship walks reminds me of Chad always says about building relationships with students is just have I don't know if he says 1 million or 1,000. Chad will have to correct me. 1 million conversations about nothing, because that's when you find those connections. To your point, that podcast, that sports team, whatever it might be, you find a connection with students. It's the same thing with people in general. So your colleagues, it's the same way. The people you support, it's the same way. Find those things that you can have those. You find that connection, and they will come to you differently. They will listen to you differently. They will receive things differently. So
totally. All right, man. We've hit the 20-minute mark. So
we are done. This was a good conversation. Yes, go ahead.
I could talk to you all day, and I feel like I have talked to you all day. But for those who are listening, you can join Tuesday mornings, 9 a.m. Eastern time, or in the evening, 7 p.m. Eastern time. Yes, Jeffrey.
I just see so, and I'm not gonna say it. I'm just gonna let people simmer on it. And but you don't want me to share the Arby's analogy I used,
maybe next week.
If you are still listening and that sparked any interest, I'm at
it
Jeff
was
Dargis
a good analogy,
on
and
X.
we all clapped that you were able to make the connection. It was
Feel free to reach out, and I'll be happy to share it. But I'm going to leave it up to folks listening and watching. So awesome, Josh. All right, well, okay, do your ending thing. I'm going to shut up now.
All right, teachbetter.com/mastermind for those who have maybe found us on YouTube, or you're listening to the podcast and this is of interest. Maybe your role has changed and you want to tap in and get some more collaboration with some other amazing leaders throughout the country. And of course, like Jeff said, we got a Facebook group. So it's Teach Better Admin Mastermind. You can look that up in Facebook, and the link is on the screen for those who are on YouTube. So we obviously want to have a community that is there for you beyond Tuesdays. So that's why we have the Facebook group, for folks to be able to reach out and get that collaboration going beyond just Tuesdays and every day of the week. So love the Admin Mastermind community. Can't wait for folks to jump in and get that support. And we love helping you. So if you need anything, please reach out to Jeff or myself. And man, I guess I'll see you next week, Jeff.
Appreciate y'all. Yep. We'll see you.